Our work will be characterized by transparency, candidness, and robustness. So this is in keeping with the promise that we have made. I also want to really say that we have seen an exceptional run of no load shedding for a considerable period of time. I think today marks 40 days without interruption of power supply. And I really want to pause here and just express my most sincere appreciation on behalf of the people of the country for the work that they are doing, the diligent commitment, ensuring that they do everything possible to address the challenge of load shedding. Of course, an argument can be made that this is what is expected of them. Yes, it is expected of them, but I'm sure you know that we're moving from an exceptionally difficult situation. And a lot of pundits had suggested that the kind of run that we're experiencing, it will not be possible in the current calendar year. It's something that can only be experienced in starting 2025. But as a result of the work that the team has done, some of which I'll be sharing with you, we're beginning to see the kind of improvements that we are seeing. And then the other part to make is Eskom delivered to the country the winter outlook, as is the custom. Eskom does on 2 occasions in a year, do what they call the summer outlook and also do what they call the winter outlook. Essentially generating 3 scenarios that they project going into the future. The first scenario is an optimistic scenario. Then there's a likely or plausible scenario, or if you like, the middle scenario and the worst case scenario. They delivered this winter plan on the 26th of April and generated a number of scenarios. The biggest takeaway for me out of that the winter outlook is a confirmation that there's a structural improvement in relation to generation in the country. What do I mean by that? If you are to juxtapose or compare the winter outlook of 2023 vis-a-vis the winter outlook of 2024 as presented by Eskom on the 26th of April, the one thing that sticks out for me is the following, is that the base case scenario of 2023 suggested that if we lose the total capacity of about 15,000 megawatts, so what we call the unplanned capacity loss factor, which talks to 2 key variables really, about the reliability of the units and also the efficiency of the units. In 2023, that base case scenario assumed that we're going to lose about 15,000 megawatts. Fast forward a year later, Eskom is generating a winter outlook, but now they've recalibrated the base case scenario. And that base case scenario is that is 14,000 megawatts. So essentially Eskom, by its own admission, accepts that the kind of improvement that we've seen is so enduring that we can say to the country that we have clawed back 1,000 megawatts compared to the same period the previous calendar year. So that's the first structural change. And the second structural change has to do with, if you like, your PMPs. So of course, as a result of the aggressive rollout of solar PV by both industry and the households, on the back of incentives provided for by National Treasury, the kind of reforms that have been introduced, you are seeing that there's greater numbers of households and industry that are taking up the opportunity to roll out solar PV behind the meter interventions. And of course, we can say part of it is triggered by the unreliability of the grid. You are exceptionally correct, but also a significant part of it is as a result of these incentives. And of course, it helps us to ensure that the energy mix draws from a number of fuel sources. And you are likely going to see that your peak either tapers or is likely going to come down. I mean, if you compare apples to apples. So that's, for me, those are the key structural changes. And those structural changes for me communicates a very important message. What is that important message? Is that we are making strides in the delivery of the Energy Action Plan as unveiled by President Ramaphosa in July of 2022. I'm making this point because, as you can imagine, we're in the silly season. There's going to be a number of extrapolations, interpretations of what is before us, whether there's a correlation of this improvement to the elections. And my answer is simple, is that when I was appointed and given this assignment, I'd entered into a pact with the country to say that you are going to receive a weekly or bi-weekly updates on the performance that we are making. Even during the most difficult times, we're able to share with you the kind of work that we are doing. And we had made the point even previously that on the back of the fiscal support received from National Treasury, Eskom has been able to invest a significant proportion of that into planned maintenance. And that's why when we went into December of 2020, transitioning into January of 2024, we experienced about 18% of the total generating capacity was taken out for planned maintenance. In megawatt terms, about 9,000 megawatts, unprecedented in the past 3 years as a result of this fiscal support, but also the Eskom following philosophy maintenance as a result of the leadership provided by the board, led by Dr. Mteto, the executive management team, led by Mr. Marokane, and of course, Mr. Beki Nxumalo, who's on the generation side, together with the many men and women who are committed to the resolution of this problem, who are located at the various power stations. So I think it's important that there has to be some degree of appreciation that these concerted efforts are beginning to bear fruits. And that's why we can say today, as I stand before you, that we are experiencing a situation where we have had 40 days of consecutive no load shedding. Of course, we want to get to a stage where it is 3 months, 6 months, is a year. But the point I always make all the time is that it's one day after the other. We accumulate the days, we'll accumulate the month, we'll accumulate the quarters, we'll get to a year, and suddenly over time, we'll get into energy security. What has delivered this in numbers terms? So remember that our biggest enemy, where we are from an Eskom point of view, remember that the Energy Action Plan has got 5 outcomes, but just on the Eskom one, which is outcome number 1, of ensuring that we fix Eskom. Really, our biggest enemy is to ensure that we address the issue of the units failing, what in technical speak they refer to as unplanned capacity loss factor. So this, like I said before, it talks to the reliability of the units just failing on their own, and or issue the efficiency of the units not giving us the megawatts that we want. Although they are not failing, they are not going off the grid, but they are not performing at the levels that we want. So what is the story here? Is that if you look at the period of May 2023, so I'm comparing the same period last year and the same period today, so that they can have the benefit of 12 months of the movement of the trend line. Remember, time is the trend line. Are we moving in the right direction? Is this a momentary success, or this communicates to the possibility of a success being sustained over a period of time, and accepting that there will be instances of momentary setbacks? When we experience those setbacks, it should not be lost on us, the fact that we are moving in the right direction. So what is the experience? Is that the same period in May, our unplanned capacity loss factor, the amount of megawatts that we lost, they moved from 16,800 megawatts to about 18,000 megawatts. So in May last year, this time, we're sitting at the losses of 18,196 megawatts. So what is the situation now as I stand before you? And I'll show you the trend line of a week-by-week basis. We have been by Sunday, the 5th of May, this number was sitting at 11,036 megawatts. So essentially, we've been able to recover as a result of this concerted effort by these distinguished men and women, starting with the board and the lowest placed member of the ESCOM team. We're able to bring back 7,000 megawatts. That's significant. And that's what accounts for what I call the structural shift. It's as a result of that. And the point I'm making is that this recovery and the clawing back of the 7,000 megawatts, it's something that has been experienced over a period of time, in this instance over a 24-month period. And in fact, all indications suggest that we will continue to improve on this number. But I'm stating you what essentially are the facts that we have recorded without necessarily making assumptions and projections going into the future.